Thank you for joining me. My name is Lena, and I'm from the Quw'utsun tribe, and your host on Resilient.
Wemden zamden kesum buwem komar wadas sanadoi we sinyoin patkuya yemo hutra yin. We need to be very, very careful, especially when we lose our identity. There won't be no more services for us. Well, just like the non-Indian out there.
So thank you for joining me. My name is Lena, and I'm from the Quw'utsun tribe, and your host on Resilient. Today I'm here with Arianna Lauren, owner of Quw'utsun Made. She's currently based out of Albuquerque, New Mexico. Welcome, and thank you for joining me today.
Thank you. Hejka. Stasiat Konatskui, Tlitsanak Samana, Tlitsanak Quw'utsun, Tlitsanak Knepsin, Tlitsanak Samana again, just in case you forgot that I didn't say Samana. Tatasia is my ancestral name. Arianna is my English name. I go by Ari to most folks. I'm Quw'utsun from Vancouver Island, British Columbia, Canada. I was born in the Quw'utsun Valley in Duncan, British Columbia. I'm also from the Samana and Knipson villages of Quw'utsun tribes. Quw'utsun tribes is an amalgamation of 7 different nations that we came together and created one tribe due to colonization and smallpox. I am the owner of Quw'utsun Made, named and inspired by my traditions of the Quw'utsun people. And I have a traditional medicine plant-based apothecary brand and lifestyle brand.
That is an amazing introduction, way better than I could have ever brought up. So how was it growing up in Canada, and how long did you live there for?
So I grew up in Canada. I grew up in 2 different places in British Columbia, Vancouver Island, which is a very small island. Well, it's actually a pretty big island, but it's a small community that I grew up in. And I was there until I was about 11 years old in Quw'utsun Valley. And that was cool. It was really beautiful, really nice. I was a kid, so I had I grew up on the res with my grandma and my sisters, playing kick the can and hanging out, picking plants and having garage sales. I also grew up in foster care, so I was kind of in and out of different people's homes, off and on the res. And a lot of that was pretty wild, pretty traumatizing, and not such a good experience. But I think it was 2001. My sister and I got adopted out by family in mainland Vancouver, British Columbia. And so we moved to Vancouver, the city, and became city kids. And that had its whole other toll on me and my sister. We changed the way we talked, we changed the way we lived, and the way we represented ourselves because we had to get by in the city. But it was amazing. It was a great opportunity for me and my sister to see what life off the res was like and life outside of our community was like. And as much as that was a really beautiful thing, it has, there's the downside as well of growing up outside of our tribe and outside of our family's traditional territory. But Vancouver and Quw'utsun, so Vancouver is Squamish Nation and Quw'utsun tribes, they're sister tribes. They speak very similar languages, and I'd say about 95% of our traditions and our culture are the same. So I wasn't too far away from home.
Well, wow, yeah, that sounds like a pretty crazy and yes, traumatizing journey that you just explained right there. Can I ask, why did you guys have to go into, or why were you guys in the adoption system?
My sister and I grew up in poverty for the most part. My parents, beautiful people, really kind and loving and compassionate people, but my dad is British from the UK, and my mom's Quw'utsun from Vancouver Island, and they both met on their journey and both met in the peak of their alcoholism. And so my sister and I are product of this beautiful connection between my parents, but also product of historical trauma on my mom's side. She's a residential school survivor. And sometimes I think about that term survivor, and I'm like, I'm not sure if she survived because my mom ended up passing away from alcoholism. And I think a lot of that was in part was due to growing up in the residential school system.
And that probably played a huge role in her journey as far as what her addiction was on that part. Wow.
Yeah.
Did
Yeah,
she ever
so
talk about her being in the residential school system?
sometimes she would. She'd talk a lot about like the nuns and the women in the school and how they forced her to like do really mundane, boring women's work, like learning how to crochet or sew, and a lot of the stuff
That's
that.
exactly what I think of that kind of work,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
it's really nice.
I mean, it's nice to have those skills. I mean,
Yeah.
my sister and I like learned a lot from my mom, as far as what her experiences were in school and like how it affected her and what she didn't like. And my mom was a really strong, and I would say my mom was like the epitome of the word badass. And so I think she
I
learned how
love
to
it.
like be a resilient, very strong, independent, like against the system kind of woman because of her upbringing in the residential school system. But she also ended up with my dad, who was a biker. They were in they had their little biker gang. And I wouldn't say it's little; it's actually a pretty big gang. But that was my life. I was a product of those two people that came together. And my dad was amazing too. My dad, even though he was Quw'utsun, which means non-native or white man, even though my dad was Quw'utsun, he did the best to learn the Halkaminum language and to spend time with the elders. And he was always drinking on the res with my elders. So he wasn't the worst kind of guy. Everyone called him Biker John, and he, had a good reputation of, being a sweet, nice guy on the res, the, the white guy that was always there taking care of the native women.
Uh-huh.
But yeah, they were pretty wild. They lived a really fast and wild life, and yeah, so I think I'm a little bit like them, but I think I learned a lot of how not to be like them.
Yeah, like maybe like a more free spirit type of person, but
Yeah,
maybe not so into that hardcore type
yeah,
of lifestyle and whatnot.
right.
Um, as far as like growing up on the reservation and
Yeah.
then coming from two different backgrounds, how do you think that affected you and your sister? Because you know, you said he's British, and then coming from your native side here, how do
Yeah.
you think that affected you in life?
I've been talking about this a lot lately because a lot of people really want me to identify what side of me is white, or like, they want me to not necessarily just pull I'm a full native,
Uh huh.
even though I've never in my life, in the 29 years on this earth, have ever been a white girl. Like I've never had the opportunity to be white. I've never had the privileges of a white woman, and I've never had the experience of living a white life. My dad, his family, I think they separated themselves from me and my sister quite early on. My dad was pretty old too. I think he was about 45 when I was born, and he was the youngest of his siblings. So
Oh
my
wow.
aunts and uncles are all up there. And I don't know them. I haven't interacted with them. I've seen them maybe once or twice in my life. But I've never had those experiences, to be a white girl. And um, but my sister and I do have features that are a little softer than most indigenous people from Cowichan, who have, the traditional bloodlines in the full DNA of a Cowichan person or of a Salish person.
And
Which,
what is that? Like what are those differences, or what are some distinct things that you think that people could call out?
probably my facial features. I mean, I have like a very Cowichan looking face. I have black eyes. I have very, very dark colored eyes, dark hair. I have high cheekbones, but I also have my dad's like really janky British teeth, and I have a smaller nose. Which in Cowichan, a lot of people have a little bit of a bigger nose than me. But for the most part, I think I look full Cowichan, and I look a lot like my mom. Everyone tells me you look like Vanessa Part Two. So
Oh, that's
um,
so sweet.
yeah, yeah.
So did did you ever get picked on, or did you have to choose a side when you were growing up? Because
Nope.
no, not at all.
No, and that was a cool thing about it. I mean, like I think a lot of kids, um, I mean, I just grew up on the res, like running around. I was the one that picked on kids. I was a bully growing up, and I don't necessarily like look back and feel a lot of shame from that, because I think I was just doing the best I could with what I knew how, or I knew how to interact with other kids. And mostly I was just picking on boys. I was never like picking on any other girls or anything like that. But I was always trying to be assertive with myself and with the res boys. And
Yeah, I think I can relate to that as well.
yeah, yeah. And I growing up in Cowichan, I didn't know I was two spirit until I moved to the city. and had the opportunity to kind of explore that more. But growing up as I never really kind of understood. Like I just knew I was a weird kid, and I was in and out of foster care and all that kind of stuff. I
Hmm.
mean, every kid in Cowichan at some point in time had knits, and every kid had, ratty clothes or Walmart shoes. And so like me
Uh-huh.
picking on them for, physical things like that would never made any sense. It was always picking on other kids that were just like picking on my sister. So I never got bullied for being different. I never got bullied for being two spirit. And I never got bullied for being in foster care, which was really lucky. It was really fortunate. And when I got to mainland Vancouver, when I got to the city, that's when things changed.
And how
They,
old were you then?
11, 12. Yeah. Things changed drastically because I was now in a city of majority Chinese and Indian kids. Um, the Sikh community, and there's like a lot of Mandarin speaking Chinese kids. My sister and I never even seen Asian people before on our island. So we had a huge culture
Culture
shift.
shock. Yeah,
Yeah.
culture shock there.
And so that's where the bullying started because we were so different than everybody else. We stood out. We were two out of maybe six kids in the Richmond School District in Vancouver that were Native. There was like
So
maybe two
then
Asian kids in my entire elementary school, so it was a huge, like, just 360.
so
Mm-hmm.
then as far as like being two-spirit, did you always feel different then? And you did it take you a long time to figure that out like in life?
I think I figured it out around like the decent age, like a very like modest age. I think I was about 15 when I was like, "Whoa, girls are hot." And I was like, I don't know if I should say anything because I remember growing up and my parents were really homophobic. And again, that's a product of the Catholic Church. Like that's not my parents' fault. I think culturally we used to celebrate two spirit people, and they were considered medicine people. So I'm not surprised I ended up being two spirit. But
Right.
yeah, it did take me, like around the age when I started like adventuring around and looking at boys, looking at girls and stuff like that. Maybe about 15, 14, 15, and by 16, I had my first girlfriend, and that was my first real relationship. And everyone's like, it's a phase, or, or we always
Right.
knew you were gay. And
Don't
I
you
was like,
hate that? You're just like, it's just a phase. Like, no, it's not.
yeah. And I'm like, no, this is just me. And then in
And
high
if it is, who
school,
cares?
exactly. But in high school, that's when like being a bisexual is just considered slutty or like greedy. And I was like, I'm
Yeah, like
not.
you don't know what you want. You don't
Yeah.
care about anybody's feelings or anything. Like you just whoever's out there,
Yeah.
I'm there for it.
Yeah, and they're just like, how could you like identify that way? And I'm like, I honestly don't care what your thoughts and opinions are on me because I'm like, I consider this like next level blessed. Like I have the capabilities and the gift to love both sides, both the masculine and the feminine, and I carry both of those. So I'm like, man, I feel sorry for straight people because I'm like, y'all are missing out because it's
Yeah,
just like a whole nother world. It's a whole nother life.
I think you just see just the whole broad spectrum of everything.
Mm-hmm.
Especially, I think that comes down to like being from two different cultures as well. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
you look at things from two sides because I can totally relate to you when you
Mm-hmm.
were saying that, you're coming from two different sides, but your dad was mainly on the res. There's always that one guy that is from a different culture, whatnot, on the res that is always hanging around and whatnot. So
Yeah.
I mean, growing up was totally different from what you said though, because when we were little, uh, especially we grew up like near the Mexican border and
Yeah.
like where our tribe is. So the Mexican kids would come across and they would go to school at our school that it's on the reservation. But us, we had to technically like pick a side. And my dad growing up, he wouldn't want to teach us Spanish. He didn't want us to have anything to do with it. And then so our friends, it was like, either pick a native side or Mexican. And as in you're little, and just like, what the hell am I supposed to do? Like, I don't want
Yeah.
to lose my friends, but I don't want to be mean to people. So then it
Right.
was just us being native. We're picking on the native side here, and then like all of a sudden we're fighting all the Mexicans all the time. So it was pretty crazy. And
Yeah.
then like growing up as well, like I mean, I felt like the same as you. Like I like who I like, but I couldn't like who I like because way back then it was frowned upon a lot different, and so you really couldn't come out. I mean, even just saying that you liked. someone of the same sex. Now it's different.
Yeah, now it's
Now
celebrated.
it now exactly. And now the kids are starting off super young. I mean,
Yeah.
they're all just out there, and I love it. I
Mm-hmm.
love it. So, I mean, we are progressing as people. So hopefully
Right.
one day, I mean, nobody is ever going to see like just one side all the time. I mean, and it's inevitable, but
Yeah,
yeah. But thank you for sharing that.
of course.
So you're moving, you were in the system, then you
Yeah.
and your sister moved, and then now you're still around like 16ish. You're trying to find out your identity and whatnot.
Yeah.
And then where are you going from there? Like what happens after that?
Actually, a pretty huge shift. So my aunt, she's my mom's sister. She's the one who adopted us out of the care system.
Okay.
She had an incredible life herself, and she also grew up in and out of the residential school system. But she decided that she only wanted my sister, which was like pretty wild. So I ended up um, being, the person that I was at the time. I found my own way, and I could have ended up like, homeless or, back in the system or, on drugs or drinking, pregnant, like a lot of the young women that I was surrounded by at the time. But I ended up
Yeah,
finding
definitely.
more family, close but extended family, to adopt me, to take me in. And it's actually my mom's cousin. She stepped up, and her husband took me in and raised me until I graduated high school. And I decided to step away. But they're a traditional Squamish Nation family. They practice a lot of our traditional ways. They were sober, in wellness. They taught wellness. Their kids all grew up in this really clear-minded, express yourself kind of way. And so when I got brought into that family, it was the most fortunate thing that could have ever happened to me, at that point in time, because
It sounds like it, yeah.
yeah, I could have ended up anywhere, and I ended up with a really strong, traditional, supportive, healthy family. And so I did go through quite a bit living with them too, but I ended up kind of gaining a lot of skills and a lot of, confidence in being, I guess, the more traditional version of myself. And so,
Is that where
yeah,
you started to learn like the whole apothecary and like getting into that type of
yeah,
world?
I'm pretty sure that's where it came from. I mean, I learned a lot about plants and medicines, and a lot of our traditional methods of healing through my living with my grandma growing up. But I also, learned about holistic wellness and what's Western holistic wellness. So energy healing and essential oils and self-help books and all of that through my, adopted mom, Eileen. And so she would bring me to bookstores, banning books in Vancouver, and we would go through these different things. And I'd read, the Four Agreements or the Five Love Languages. And at like 15 years old, I was
At
pretty open.
15, wow.
Yeah, 15, 16, I was pretty open minded, and I had a really cool perspective on life. And I don't think a lot of kids really had that emotional awareness at that age.
Not at
I
all.
think you're pretty ego based at that time. And I was like learning how to remove the ego.
You're
But
all
that's,
focusing on
yeah,
your zen and
yeah. So it's a funny thing, like that. It just kind of hit me out at the prime time of my life, where like, I really could have went down one road and I went down the other. And, and Eileen really pushed me in a good way. She wasn't really so much pressuring me, but she pushed me to go into a holistic wellness college in Vancouver, called Rhodes Wellness College. And I did. I went to that school for a while. I didn't really enjoy it. I spent all of my mom's residential school settlement money on tuition.
oh wow.
So I didn't ask my tribe for. I did ask my tribe for money, and they denied me because I lived off the res. I wasn't a priority student, which was not my fault. I think there's maybe, I don't know what the percentage is, but it's a very small percentage of Cowichan people that could actually live on the Cowichan res or in Cowichan. So I was kind of like this odd one out. So I used my mom's residential school settlement, my dad's, pension that he passed on when he passed away as well. So I used money that I had in my trust fund to pay for my education. And first year into college, I was really learning a lot of great stuff, but I just was not prepared to be the youngest student in my private college by 12 years. I was 18 years old. The next oldest person was maybe 30, 32, 33. and small class sizes, 12 people. It was like a counseling session every day. We were doing um, wellness counseling and life coaching and marriage counseling and yoga and all this stuff. And I was like, man, I just want to party.
Yeah, you're
I
like,
just want to be
I'm
19.
18 years old,
Yeah,
19 years old.
yeah,
Like, I haven't even experienced this stuff yet. I don't even know
right,
what any of this means. Like, I want to
right.
go out and hang out with my pals.
Yeah, and I was so sheltered in high school. I was not that kid that was drink. I got caught drinking once when I was 16, and I never did it again. And so when I was in college, I was like, all my friends were having college experiences at regular schools, and I'm over here going to a wellness school, signing like a little agreement with my professor saying I wouldn't drink or do drugs. And I was like, I mean,
You're
this is
like,
like the prime place for it because people just really want to explore themselves here. And I was like, oh
right.
my God. So it was cool because I learned a lot. I also held down a part time job at an essential oil based skincare store. So that's kind of where my interest in apothecary and skincare came from. And I look back at that job and I'm like, I just thought it was a job.
Yeah.
And I didn't know that I was so inspired. The woman who owns that company, it's a big company in Canada now. She's awful. And I've noticed that a lot of people that own these companies are awful people and don't realize that they're working with like really sacred plants and essential oils and essential oils made from medicine. And I just
It's the
like,
greed. It's the
yeah,
greed
I
that
just
drives
wanted
them,
to,
but and
yeah,
the perception of them is just like, "Hey, wow, this person is amazing." Like
right,
they do all they have all these healing things that I could use and whatnot, but
yeah.
yeah, they're probably really nasty people.
Yeah, they're all in it for the money. And so when I left college, I had no intention of being in I mean, I dropped out of college. I didn't even finish my program. I left because it was just such a, and I like to say ass backwards because everyone in there was like, all holistic wellness. We're going to get right with ourselves. And then like there'd be a woman, like I'd leave class and she'd be like, do you know where I can get some like Molly? I'm like, because I was the youngest person in the school. So she just assumed I was like in with the other kids that. And I was like, oh my God, we all signed an agreement. Like we're all supposed to be healthy people. Like, why are you trying to ask me about this? Or like, so, she wanted to have this experience. And I was like, it was so funny because everyone was just trying to be right with themselves, and then at the end of the day, like you'd leave class and they're like they just wanted a party too, and I was just like, I don't get it. Like I don't get this world. Like everyone's just seemingly good people, but then everyone wants their experience too. They want to be there. They want to act out in their wild side too. And
Yeah, I
so
mean, it's all a learning experience. I mean,
yeah,
I totally, I mean, I really think that it was an awesome thing for her to, kind of push you into where she thought it was a good way or a good place for you to be, but then it's also you needed to experience on your own and find that journey on for yourself.
right,
But still, you learned a lot. It seems like while you were growing up in a
yeah,
short amount of time, and this is most likely, part of the reason why you are where you're at right now in your journey on this.
yeah,
So I think that's pretty cool. Now, as far as like you're getting into that, you're in school, you're in school, but you kind of want to party. So you drop out? Like
yeah,
what?
yeah. I
Okay, so you
dropped
drop.
out. I dropped out and got a job at a club.
Go figure.
Yeah. So I worked for like a pretty well-known like company that owned like all the bars and clubs in Vancouver, and
Okay.
I just went from like this wholesome, like not I wouldn't say straight edge, but I went from this like pretty wholesome well girl to like, you want to come to my club tonight? You want free shots? Like I was just it just was such a huge like just
Transition or shift in
transition.
your life.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was just like another one, and I'm like, okay, here we go. And I got my sister into it too, and we built so much character through that job because we had no confidence. We were the girls in school that were like a little bit off because we had our own family issues at home, like every other kid did, but we kept to ourselves, and we're more a straight edge. And then we get into or out of college, I'm working for a club, and then all of a sudden, everybody that I didn't talk to in high school was like, "Hey, can you put me on guest list?" Or all of a sudden thought I was like the most attractive person in the world, and like wouldn't even
And you're
talk to
like,
me in
no, you're
school.
mean to me.
Yeah, and so it was funny because like we could have took that in stride, and we did. We were just like, "That's cool. Like you were this way now, or then, and you're this way now." But we didn't put our egos in front of ourselves, and I think that that's what could have happened. We remained pretty like humble We're like, cool, thanks, but here's your free shot and have fun at the club. But we're not like trying to make them, jump through hoops to be our friend. We're
Yeah.
like
So you didn't
power
treat
trip.
them like they treated you.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. And like everyone was like in their early 20s, and you're just like everyone just wants to have fun and live, and that's like your prime, being a little having no responsibilities, but like also becoming an adult. And so it's just like, yeah, again,
You're just
pretty
finding your
aware.
way.
Yep, pretty aware.
Okay,
So,
so then after you're working at a club, and then what did you do after that?
um, I ended up kind of finding my way into small businesses, small indigenous businesses. I met my friend Alano Adzerza, who owned an art gallery, and in Vancouver, it was an artist-owned gallery. He was in his late 20s at the time, and I don't know. My sister and I met him while we were working for the clubs. Like, so we just bumped in this guy, this native guy, starts chit chatting, and he's like, "Hey, you guys should work for me." And they're like, "Oh, whatever." Like, here's another fucking weirdo. And turns out he was like this, really incredibly talented person with an amazing business idea that just needed some help. And so I started working in his art gallery, and then that gallery turned into a clothing company. And this clothing company actually blew up. In Indian country, it blew up. And it was an incredible thing to watch because me and my sister got involved. And then we helped shift that business into an art gallery, into a full-blown online clothing company. My sister did all the photos, and I helped with whatever parts I could along the way. But then I started finding other work with other small businesses, to support myself, and little internships here and there. And I knew I wanted to be an artist. I knew I wanted to be a maker. And so I just kind of stuck with that. But somehow I ended up just taking off to Seattle. I think I was like 23, 24, and I just decided I wanted to live in Seattle. And so I moved, and I got a job at uh, Trader Joe's as a sign artist, and I was like living in my prime then. It was pretty cool. It's
Like a
like,
sign artist, what's that?
yeah, it's getting paid to make signs for a grocery store, so painting all day long.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So if you ever go into a Trader Joe's, like their little price tags on the shelves, or like the end signs, the big chalkboard signs, all of those are handmade by an artist in the store. And
Oh, I
moving to
never knew that.
Yeah, I didn't either. I like graffiti, and I needed a job. And I didn't want to work somewhere like too American, but like not, I wanted the experience. And so I ended up randomly stumbling into this job, and it was great. Like, I just really got to focus on being myself. Um, but I was also working for a corporate company, which didn't have a whole lot of space for a young Native woman. I was tokenized a lot there, and customers treated me pretty poorly, but I was still like, I get benefits and a decent wage to paint chalkboards all day long.
You're like,
Yeah,
who's the real winner here?
exactly. And I got like cheap groceries, so yeah, it was good for me at the time. But it's just like not, again, what I just kept seeing people who worked there in their 60s, and I'm like, God forbid I work at Trader Joe's in my 60s. You
Yeah, like I
know,
don't
like,
even wanna, yeah. Why do I have to work until then?
yeah, and that's the American life, and like the American dream. I feel like it's completely different than what it was 30 years ago. I think nowadays it's like you have to hold down a couple of jobs, and back in Seattle.
Yeah, just to make it in life. I mean, it's totally different. What they teach in schools right now
Hmm.
is, they teach you in school that after school you have to go to college, and then after college and you're in all this debt, you go and you have to get a job that you supposedly went to school for, but nobody's going to hire you because you don't have any experience in it. So then
Hmm.
you can't get hired. So then you go into this other off the wall job that you get hired as an entry level position, and you're making this, below what you're supposedly worth, and then you're supposed to find somebody that you're going to share your life with, and you're supposed to have kids, and then
Yeah,
after all this, like, all this debt is still there, it's still accumulating, and you're still not in the job that you wanted to be in when you when you first went to school. So it
right.
just teaches you that to keep you at the bottom, to keep you at the bare minimum, so that they can start giving you welfare if none of this works out. I mean, it's totally horrible. If I could go back and do everything differently, I would totally pick a trade or something along those lines, like learn something versus
Yeah.
actually going to college, because you as much experience as you get, it's worth a degree. It's worth that piece of paper that I don't even have. I think they're in boxes somewhere.
Right. And the thing, yeah, me and my sister could have been like the first in our family to get like a degree. I don't even know if my dad had a degree, and I don't even know what my parents' education history is. But I just knew that I didn't want to live that life either. But when I was going to college, and one of the reasons why I dropped out is because, I got put in my practicum, and I got placed in a halfway house with all men transitioning out of jail who had issues with stalking and rape and drug use and, a lot of mental health issues. And they put a 19-year-old girl in there trying to teach these men what the word accountability meant. And at the end of the
Oh,
day, I'd have to have a male escort help me get all the way back to school because there was men who would stalk me and they would find me. And
oh my
so
goodness.
I just had to get out of there. I was like, I'm a young Native woman. This is the scariest possible thing that could ever be, happening to me. But this is like not, I mean, this is college. Like they're just trying to get their money out of me at the end of the day. As much as they want to give me an education, they don't care if I pass my practicum or not. They just
No,
want
they
to make sure that
don't.
I
They
pay my
don't care.
tuition. Hmm.
Exactly. They do not care what grade. They care about how much money they are going to get from you. They don't care if you have to take the class again. They don't even care if you fail. Some of my professors, they didn't even care. They just said, okay, go on. And I'm like, I didn't even turn this in.
Yeah.
And then you're very fortunate, I was going to say, because like working in a place like that, I can't even imagine. And especially with this whole MMIW, that is this whole epidemic that's going on, go what it was like back then. And for
Hmm.
you, oh my gosh, I can't
This is
even
like
imagine that.
this is only like a decade ago, and
Yeah.
it's wild to think that these people could put me in that position. And that's when I just drew the line. I was like, you absolutely do not care about my well-being, and this is a wellness school. And so I put myself in a situation where I just stood up and I was like, this is wrong. I can't believe you guys would allow me to go. You could have put me like there's other people who had to go work in not shelters, but food banks and things like that. I'm like, why would you put the youngest, most naive and vulnerable girl in the worst of situations, or like the most dangerous of situations? So I think back now, and I'm like, I'm really grateful that I dropped out. I didn't get that degree, but I'm also, I kind of have a little bit of regret for not having that piece of paper. But I'm also, again, grateful I don't have a mountain of debt and that I was able to just
Yes.
jump into starting a business. And, I think that taught me a lot back then to just always work with what I have. And maybe that's a teaching from when I was young, but I never borrowed money from anybody or took out a loan or, I've always just done things with my own means. And so when I dropped out of school, I didn't owe my school anything after that. I just like I left and I didn't have any debt, piling up. I went and worked, paid my rent each month and you got by until like 25, 26. And then I decided, you know what, I really have this cool idea of a business. And if I don't start it today, it's not going to happen. And at the time, I was 26 years old. I was living in a small community in Washington, helping my uncle with traditional work in trade for rent and free living. And I got to live in the middle of this beautiful state on my traditional territory, having a traditional life. And so I had no overhead. 26, I was
Oh,
like,
wow.
I had like $300. I just quit a really crappy job with a woman who made soap in town, this really small town. And I had like $300. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to start my business today. Like, if I don't do it today, I'm probably going to be broke and like, you know, in
So
a weird position.
you woke up thinking like, I have this $300 and this is what I'm going to do.
Yeah. So I bought candle jars, candle wicks, candle wax, some essential oils. I heard there was a basketball tournament on the res like that weekend that needed some vendors. And we made 36 candles and sold out that weekend. And I was like, this is Quw'utsun Made? What the hell? Like,
Oh my
this is,
God, that is awesome.
yeah. And I was like, I was a kid. I had no idea what I was doing. I knew how to like kind of run a business again from all of that experience in my early 20s working for everybody else's business and, learning how to write an invoice or wholesale to somebody or, to look for proper price breaks on products and jars. And I learned a lot really fast and stuff that people go to school for. I learned just, the street knowledge kind of stuff. So 26 years old, I jumped into it and I was like, whoa, I think I'm onto something.
That is awesome.
Yeah.
26 years old,
Yeah.
$300, 36 candles,
Yeah.
sold out, and that started Quw'utsun Made.
It did. It really did. And, um, the thing about that business that really made me who I am today was where I chose to be. And I think I chose to always be around Native people. So when I went to that basketball tournament, it was a Native basketball tournament at a Native college. There was Native professors at that basketball tournament watching their kids play or their students play. And this one lady was watching me. She was watching me talk about my product and how passionate I was about the medicines and the inspiration for each of the candles that I put out, cedar, tobacco, and sweetgrass candles that I still make today. She watched me, and my partner and I at the time went on a road trip after that. We had a little bit of money, and we're like, let's go to Albuquerque, New Mexico. So we did. We came all the way down here where I live now. And that lady phoned me, and she said, I want to offer you a job at Northwest Indian College teaching traditional plants and in the traditional plants and foods department. She's like, I heard the way you talked about your candles, and I think you'd be a great teacher. Here's the contract. It's X amount of $1,000 for 3 months. And I was like, oh my God.
Trying to
Money?
play it off cool, like,
Yeah.
yeah, okay,
Yeah.
let me think about it.
Yeah. I'm like, really, I really was. I was like in a hotel room, like, sure, thank you for the opportunity. And then I went home and I was like, oh my God, like I got
Here
a
I
real
am,
job out of
got a
this.
real job.
But they hired me as my business. And I
Oh,
was like, I
excellent.
didn't want her to know that I had only been doing that for like a week and a half before she phoned me. It's like trying to be like, yeah, I've
You're
been
like,
doing
I know
this
my shit. I do. I
forever.
really do.
Yeah. So that like she gave me the foundations, that money, that work, the going out and teaching at the college, and then they branched me out to go teach at the elders retirement home in Lummi. And so working with the elders and the students really, really shaped how I was going to go about business for the next couple of years because I had to serve my community. And I got to guinea pig test them with every single product. So they'd be like, give me a recipe for psoriasis and eczema. So I'd go home and, dream up something. And the next week we'd make it together. And I'm like, I hope this works because I don't want to make a fool of myself. And so based on the ingredients and the recipes and, plants and things that I knew how to work with, I created all of these different products, tested them out at the school or at the elders retirement home. And then my product line was born. And it was just like such a crazy thing, like such an indigenous thing. Cause it's like, I don't think any other skincare business is kind of going off the same story.
Not at all.
Yeah.
I mean, not the ones that I've read or watched.
Right.
So that's pretty interesting. So then what your product line, like how many items did you start off with?
Three. I think it was like
Just
lip
the
balms,
okay.
candles, and salves. And then we added lotion, and then I added just one thing after another. And I got into soap, got back into soap. And then now I think I have around 38 to 40 products.
And I've tried not every single one of them, but I've tried quite a few. I just placed that order not too long ago. One of your perfumes that I've gotten. It's I'm not even sure what it is, the Weaver or something like that.
Yeah.
Smells amazing. Uh, and then I just have the rose nettle mist. That's pretty awesome as well. And I guess I'm saying it wrong. I thought it was salves, but it's salves.
Salve. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I love, love, love your products. So after you're teaching over here,
Mm-hmm.
in it's PNW, correct? Pacific
Yes.
Northwest. All right. So
Yes.
you're teaching there. How long did you do that for?
About 2 years full time. Like I was, doing workshops in the school, at the retirement home, and then conferences and organizations and all these different places were asking me, hey, I heard you do workshops. Could you do a workshop here? So I was doing like 2 to 3 workshops a week for 2 years straight. And actually, 2019 is the first year that I have done nearly zero workshops. When I've spent this entire last year focusing on my business plan. But the last 2 years, those workshops helped sustain my business. It helped give me enough capital to continue buying jars and to start making new products and to order proper shipping, packaging, and all of these different things because my margins for things were pretty good, but I was only selling a few things here and there on my website and or at the time when I first started it was Etsy. But the workshops and the different things, the speaking gigs gave me enough money, you know. And I remember a few times people would try to ask me to work for free. My partner at the time, his name's Brandon. My
Really?
partner Brandon at the time was like, "We can't work for free. We
That's how
can
we
absolutely,
live.
yeah, we can absolutely not work for free. That's not right to ask somebody who is teaching traditional plant medicine to work for free." So we
Where would they ask you to work for free at?
conferences, they'd be like, "Oh, can you teach an 8-hour workshop to like 250 people for free and like pay for your own materials? We'll give you a hotel room and we'll give you a vendor space so you can make some money this weekend." Like, okay, a hotel room is not enough. And a vendor space, yeah, that makes me some, like, that gives me space to sell my products, but that's like me making back the money on the product, not the, the
Or on your
workshop
travel?
materials. Yeah, or the travel. So um, right at that point in time when that happened, Brandon was like, "We need to ask. We need to just say what our needs are." And we're like, "Hey, we can't work for free." And then they're like, "Oh yeah, well, we also forgot to check your credentials." I'm like, "What do you mean credentials?" They're like, "Well, we also need to make sure you're qualified to teach traditional plant medicine." And I was like, "Okay, get at me when you tell me what those qualifications are." And because I'm like, I'm traditionally qualified, I am
Exactly.
ancestrally qualified.
There's no
And
more qualification than that.
right, I was like, I grew up with my grandma. Like, you tell me what you're looking for, and I'll tell you whether I got it or
Oh
not.
yeah, I'll direct you.
And so they came back to me and they're like, "Whoa, you're right. Like, we didn't mean to offend you, and how does like X amount of dollars sound?" And it was like 3 times what we were thinking to ask for. And I think
Wow.
we're like, "Whoa, we should speak up more often." And so that really taught me a lot too about I couldn't work for free, not in the sense where um, I would just give and not receive. And Coast Salish people, if we invite you to our ceremony or if we invite you to our events, gatherings, whatever it is, we gift you, we pay for your travel, we accommodate you, and we always make sure that you are just taken care of, fed, looked out for, spiritually well, and then we always gift you, like I was saying. So there's always like a an appreciation for the work that we invite into our communities. And when I was going out into the world as a small business owner, I didn't know if I was going to go into that as like just a regular small business or as an indigenous small business. And I chose to go the indigenous way. And so I've really used my platform to speak out about indigenizing the business world and getting non-indigenous businesses, white businesses, to start following our protocol instead of us following theirs. Like, we've been doing that since colonization. It's kind of like time to get
It's
right
time
with
to
the
flip the
natives.
script. Yeah, it's
Yeah,
time to
so I'm
flip the
like,
script and do the things the right way or how
yeah.
they should be done.
So if you're going to invite an elder, take care of them. If you're going to invite a young medicine person or a person of, traditional ways, take care of them in their traditional way. Reach out to somebody in their community and find out how they would like to be gifted, or, traditional foods to offer them, or, an accommodation. I've had businesses that have heard me speak in about this and have followed through with that. So I've had a school in Vancouver. They went and found traditional gifts that we would have given out in our ceremony, and they went and got those to give to me at the end. And so,
Oh, how cool. How'd that
yeah,
make you feel?
it's just, well, like, it makes me feel whole. It makes me feel like the work that I'm doing is um, good work and that it's being received in a good way. And because the whole process of sharing traditional plant medicine and having this business is to connect people with plants and to connect people to the ways that we always, like, every single human being on planet Earth has come from plants. It's not just native people. So my whole business is to just connect people to their ancestral roots. And white people have ancestral roots. They're just not on our territories here in North America.
Yeah, I
So,
was just about to say that.
yeah.
They do. It's just not here.
And they might have just forgotten them.
Exactly. Yeah, no, but I don't think a lot of people pass those down to them, so they really don't know,
Right.
what they are, who they are, what they stand for, anything like that. So I'm glad that you brought that up. Okay, so then you're you finally got to where you're not working for free
Mm-hmm.
and you're getting paid as far as like what you're worth or beyond that. And what happens after that? So do you still stay there? Is that when you made your way back or to here to New Mexico? Like how did that?
I I was like kind of at the peak last year. I was doing workshops for a few different places. I was kind of living half between Seattle, half between Vancouver. I mean, I was running, my business is based out of Seattle at the time, but I was spending, I'd say about 95% of my time in Vancouver. I got hired by Stanley Park, which is a very big park in the city of Vancouver. And it's based on the traditional territory of the Squamish people. And what they did is they evacuated or like basically pushed out all the native people 152 years ago and onto the North Shore. And that park became a park. And there's traditional plants in there. There's ancestral roots and probably bones of our ancestors on that land. And it's now it's like a park. It's a tourist attraction.
Okay.
And somehow I got a gig with them through a friend, a cousin, and I started teaching traditional plant medicine through them. So I spent a lot of time back home in Vancouver, and I was working with different organizations because of them. So I ended up like teaching a workshop to Lush Cosmetics, which is absolutely outrageous. It blows my mind that happened. I just told them straight up, I was like, if you steal my ideas, I'm coming for you.
Yeah, right. I'm watching you.
Yeah. So I got to do a lot of really incredible work through that park because they also let me speak my mind. They said you could share whatever you want to share. So I would always tell them, I'm like, hey, this is my family's traditional territory. If you guys are going to go out here and mess around, do it with that in mind, because my ancestors maybe they're not so forgiving, but it's also kind of a strange thing that I couldn't harvest the plants in that park because it's park land. And so I'd have to teach traditional plant medicine, but I'd have to bring plants in from outside of the park. So like other places that I harvested. And I had no rights to teach harvesting in that park. It's protected. And I was like, you know what? This is kind of outrageous, but I still appreciated the work and I still appreciated the opportunity. And I absolutely loved them. And I loved that they let me be myself. But I had taken a trip to Santa Fe last summer and I was like, this is where I want to be. There's something here. There's a teaching, that's being brought all throughout the Pan Indigenous community, and it's uniting the eagle and the condor, the North and the South. Mm-hmm. And once that hit me, when I first started my business, that's when that teaching was introduced to my life, and it stuck. And so I just knew in my spirit that I had to be in the Southwest.
That's where you're supposed to be, like this part of your journey.
Yes, so that's where it was taking me. And a Pacific Northwest skincare brand or apothecary brand that's based on traditional plant medicine from the Pacific Northwest, going to the Southwest made absolutely no sense. But I prayed about it, and that's where I needed to be. So I ended up here. And I think I executed that in less than 6 months. Oh, so wow. I knew by August, I made that decision probably in April. By August, I was 100%, 110%. And I moved here in October. So very quick transition. But, we went into prayer and ceremony with my elders back home. And they're like, this is the right thing for you to do. And when I got here,
just do it.
Yeah. So I got here and I was like, let's see what happens. And a lot happened. I had no plan. I had no idea what this place had for me. I wanted to live in Santa Fe.
You didn't know anybody?
Not a single soul. I knew like 2 people here. I knew of some things here. I'd never really spent much time in Albuquerque. It was always Santa Fe or Taos. But I got here and I kind of got to work. I got into like my art. I got to do a little bit of beadwork because I was like still trying to get to know my surroundings and things. Like mostly stayed at home and played around on some beads and Instagram. And I Instagrammed a lot about my experience. And some locals here that I had met a few times had reached out to me before I moved here to tell me about this program called the NEAR program, offered by New Mexico Community Capital. And NEAR stands for Native Entrepreneurs in Residence. And so I sat down with a cup of coffee one day, didn't even know if there was a deadline or what the application entailed or if I even qualified. And I sat down and I filled it out and I sent it, totally BS'd my way through it. I had no plan. I had no business plan. I knew nothing. I just knew what I was doing. And I knew that I had a really interesting business that was a little bit different than the average.
You believed in yourself.
Yeah. And I got a phone call like 3 weeks after I moved here, I got a phone call that said I got accepted into that program and that it started in January. And I was like completely beside myself. So I had a purpose now. I was going to be locked in for 7 months in a program that offered me $15,000 in capital to write a business plan. And I was like, oh my God, everything is just like puzzle pieces that just fit
Yeah, it's
perfect.
all aligning.
And so I just completed that program last month, probably about half a month ago, maybe a month ago now. But that was
How did that make
probably
you feel when you accomplished that?
incredible. Like I'm
Congratulations, by
so
the way.
lazy in the mind. Thank you. I'm so lazy in the mind. Like I barely skid my way through school and and in college, and I tend to drop out when things get pretty tough for me. Um, but I finished this program, and the response when I presented my business pitch and my plan to my mentors and my cohort and the um, basically all the people that had accepted me into the program, when I presented it back to them, they were like, wow, like, wow, you know what you're doing.
Yeah,
Wow,
you
you did a
learned.
great job. And I was like, really? I legit thought they were going to tell me to like wrap it up and do it again, like start from scratch, like that I was missing pieces. Um, but I got such great feedback and I learned so much through that program. And I got a community through that program. I got to engage with different business owners. I got to go and speak at the Native Women Lead Summit where I met you.
Yeah, we met each other there. That was so awesome.
And that gave me an opportunity to build even more community because that was my target market. It was Native women in business who knew how to support and knew what to support. And so, me being that small little business with skincare that every woman in their life doesn't need but wants, I was in the perfect place at the perfect time. And
What did
uh,
you think about that conference? Was that your first one that you went to?
for the Native Woman Lead, it was the first time I'd done anything like that in the Southwest. It was great. It was fantastic.
Don't you
It was,
think so? Oh my
yeah,
God.
I was so proud of the women that organized that. And I'm really close with them in a lot of different ways. Like there's, I think, 7 of them, maybe more, maybe less. I'm not too sure. But I've connected with each of them in a different way and look up to them in a different way. And Jacqueline Rosell, she's one of the founders of that. She's the person that introduced me to the NEAR program. So I owe her a lot for believing in me and my business, and her partner Warren. But they invited me to that summit, gave me the opportunity to speak, to share my business beyond borders was the title of um, my little workshop. And I got to speak to women about what it is like to be a Canadian woman doing business in the U.S. Even though I'm an Indigenous woman and the border doesn't exist to our Native people, it does in the business world, and it does when you go to qualify for grants or funding because I'm not from a federally recognized tribe. So they gave me a really cool opportunity to speak about that. But they also gave me a vendor space, and that's when I got to just meet all these incredible people, just sharing my stuff and my products. And
Yeah, that was one of the most amazing spaces that I've ever been in, especially with that amount of Native women in one area. They were so, and I mean, as soon as I walked in, I was inspired. Everyone was happy. I mean, there
right,
was tons of like just business women all over the place, CEOs, entrepreneurs, anybody and everybody was there, and it was
yeah,
just the most amazing space. And I'm so fortunate to have met you, along with a couple of other gals that I met, Monica and Felicia of
oh
Kawe
my God,
Resilience.
yeah,
Yes, they are so dope. I can't wait to have them on the show.
yeah,
But yeah, you guys are just some amazing women and just doing the work, putting in the work day to day or day by day, and your entire journey from when you were tiny up until where you're at now. I mean, it was like puzzle pieces, like you said, just everything just coming together.
yeah. I
So
think it's really important that people, don't necessarily fall into the idea of what they think they could be because, or they think that they are. Because if I always kept this idea that I was just a foster kid from the res, and I would have stayed in that mentality and like enslaved myself to that mentality and stayed in Cowichan, and maybe not become the medicine person that I am now. Or, there's a million other paths I could have ended up in, but I've always maintained this really strong, resilient mindset. And I've been through hell and back again, and still want to offer good things to people. And so I'm really hoping that this brings me back to my community, because I really want to get back to Quw'utsun, and I really want to be able to teach the things that I've learned, and the whole be a good ancestor. I really want to go back to my territory and be that good ancestor. I don't want to end up stuck down here in the Southwest forever, because I think
Mm-hmm.
I'm just here to gather some teachings, some
Exactly.
knowledge, and some
To take
medicine to
back,
bring
yeah.
home. Yeah. And the Pueblo and the Navajo people of this territory have been incredible. They've been really hard on me, but they've been really compassionate and open. And I've had to learn how to walk very carefully down here, but also in a way where it's going to bring me home, and help me to pass that on to the youth and my peers in a good way.
That's incredible. And I really appreciate you sharing your story here with me. Uh, is there anything else that you wanted to leave our listeners with?
There was one thing when we were talking about the Native Women Lead Summit. We were
Mhm.
talking about the beauty of all these women coming together, but I think one thing that I really appreciated about that conference too was the selection of men that they chose to be there.
Yes.
And there's a really beautiful handful of Indigenous men and maybe non-binary people as well that were at that event that support our community in a good way, have really strong skills. And there's one particular friend that's not with us anymore that I got to build a connection with, and he was doing the videography for that event. And I really appreciated the opportunity to sit down with him then,
And who
and
is that?
Jake Hepwesa. And so he's the one who did all the video work, and I got to treat him with medicine because he had a head cold that day, and he sat down and he let me bring out the medicines that I just randomly was carrying in my bag, my purse. And that interaction meant so much to me, because I'm just this Coast Salish girl, this little Quw'utsun girl down in the Southwest carrying medicine. And whether people want to accept it or not, that's on them. But when they do, it like shakes me to the core. It moves me. And so I know that I'm doing the work that I'm supposed to be doing. So that day when he accepted that cup of tea that I made him, like really affirmed that I was in the right place at the right time, and I was doing the work that I'd been meant to do. And so it's unfortunate he's not with us anymore, but that interaction will like be ingrained in me until the end of my lifetime. And so that was really powerful. And I still think of all of the men that were there, and all of the men that are surrounding and uplifting and holding Native women business owners up, or just guiding us along, or inspiring us to be better than them.
Right. Yeah.
So
Rest and
yeah,
power to him,
yeah, yeah.
and many prayers to his family. And I
Mm-hmm.
and I I didn't really understand why there were men there at that time. But
Mm-hmm.
then I went back to my hotel room and I thought like, hey, this is a good space. This is a very positive space, and more should be there,
Mm-hmm.
uplifting and being positive for their partners, or just wanting to be in a positive space, like you said.
Yeah, because they got to
It's
take a page from our book.
exactly
We've been in spaces with Indigenous men for so long, where we've had to watch them be the focal point of our entire community or our culture. Having Native men be the most often like casted in movies over Native women. There's more Native roles for men and things like that. Just like as an example, you see more Native men in politics as well. So I just wanted to see more men there, or just in these spaces, because they need to see how powerful we are, and not just hear about it when we get home and we're like, oh, we had such a great day today, or telling our sons or our brothers or our uncles. They
there to
need to
witness.
witness it.
Yeah.
Yeah, they need to witness
Yes.
it. And so I always try to invite men into my life, to see what I'm doing and to collaborate with them. And I think just create an equal playing field for all of us, because I think 2019 is a good year for that. And the non-binary, and really like supporting all of these different people in different corners, the different four corners of the world, um, and just coming together and just trying to find balance. Because if we're balanced, then we're able to fight, colonization, and kind of rematriate our life a little bit more, and indigenize the culture around us a little bit more. So we just need to unify and balance a little bit more.
I couldn't have said it better myself. You
Hmm.
So, Ari, I thank you for your time and I appreciate you giving me this time and space here to speak with you on your journey with Quw'utsun Made. And hopefully, I didn't murder that too much. But where
Mm-mm.
can we find you?
You can find me on Instagram at Quw'utsunmade. It's long, but it's worth it. Find me on Instagram, reach out in the DMs, comment and like my photos, and I'll engage with you and do my best to share community in that space with you. Instagram's probably the best way. You can get me on my website at quw'utsunmade.com and hit me up through the emails as well. I'm trying with Facebook, but Facebook's kind of a dinosaur these days.
Old,
Yeah, and I just don't do Twitter because Twitter is a funny place for
toxic.
for your girl. So Instagram is probably your best bet, and I would gladly love to talk to you.
Awesome. That's Ari Lauren, guys. Thank you for joining me on Resilient, music by Larry Hambin and produced by Kane Palone, aka Structure of the Maintain Fam. This podcast is brought to you by Quw'utsun Media Inc. Together, we are planting a seed that will start a movement amongst Quw'utsun people and every Indigenous individual. You can find us on Facebook at Quw'utsun Media Inc. or follow me on the gram at Resilient or Miss Ya 49. Thank you all. Until next time.
There were people here. And these people that lived here, basically, there were many cultures and many languages. But they were the people of this land base. And almost universally within this concept, they always referred to themselves in their own languages or culture as the people. Human beings. But that was always a part of the self-identification, the identification of self, the people. And the Europeans came and they refused to recognize us as the people. They called us Indians.